guess when I said Councilman Naeem's running a little late, so we'll just catch him up. I don't think we're gonna get too far without him. We know Councilman Hassan is, gonna be here at 7, so we'll do the best we can. So first up is, our DPW director, which is actually probably our largest department by far as costs go. John, do you wanna just, scoot up to the chair here, and then we can start going through the screen? No sense in staring at the podium the whole time, as long as it's okay with mayor and council,
That's
so.
You want me to go ahead and put it up on the screen for us?
Okay, so we start off with page,
Here's a little bit different, John, you get a full printout.
oh, okay.
You just have to stick it
So
through.
page 6. Page 6. Okay, so building and grounds, 265.
You have to have ground.
Yeah, it's not 6, it's,
Six.
Oh,
uh,
7,
it's 5,
that's 5? Okay.
yep, bottom of 5. Can you turn on your speaker, please, on your table? Your mic, thank you.
Okay, so basically it's for, at the bottom of 5 for mine, it's 265 building and grounds.
okay.
Mayor, council members, you there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right, John, you got, you ready here?
Yeah.
All right, so as far as salaries, holidays, overtime, social security, insurances, all of that is pretty much calculated by Amir's office directly in conjunction with human resources, based upon contracts and things we're already obligated. Obviously, we add a little bit to that in case something happens, contracts change, cost of living, so on and
Right.
so forth.
And as per the, various CBA agreements, there are already, increments that are built into these agreements, so, those are built into the calculation. Plus, there are a few areas where we did add some, employees that we are hiring. So those areas like police, like fire, assessor's office and, things like that, so.
So you will see variations as we go, as opposed to what we had for last year, but for 2020, 23 to 24, we're asking for 95,000 for salaries and building and grounds. John, do you want to give some weigh into some of these line items of how you formulated what's needed?
Let's, I think mostly talk about the, capital outlays and some of the other bigger
We can do that.
items.
You want to start going through what we have as far as under those outlays in buildings and grounds?
For the building, no, we really don't have much.
No, we don't, just mainly.
Yeah, but,
What do you mean for salaries?
Okay. All right, well, street lighting is on there. I mean, that's sort of a fixed thing. There's not much we can do with that. I mean, most of this is
Most of this is.
repeat from last year. Nothing in there is extraordinary. I mean, is there anything specific you might have a question on in that area? I mean, some of the larger things, as we switch to the other funds, you'll see where we're budgeting for, street repavings, potential alleys, things of that nature, but, it's broken down throughout the various different, budgets as we go through, so.
I think the bigger areas for John are water and sewer fund, and then the major roads and local streets. So these are the areas where we spend most of our money in terms of infrastructure and in terms of capital expenditure.
So, like I said, there's
What
nothing
is the building maintenance? Which building is that? That's 185,000, 186,000.
So we're looking at 265,776,
Right,
right out in the center there.
That's everything from your, anything to do with painting, carpeting.
Anything you
and
would need to do at
maintenance,
City Hall.
so we are basically budgeting 100,000 next year. So last year, we had an expense of 186,000, and for 2023-24, we are budgeting about 100,000.
So that could be all-inclusive of anything City Hall would need.
Any
Like, I
repairs.
just got data drops put in for my internet at the office, it came out of like the building maintenance, so anything around, any
So
office.
anything that needs to be done to the building in terms of, change
So
a
we-
window or something.
We can estimate on, you know, just general repairs on that every year, but, I mean, who knows what we might need in a given year, so,
And the toilets, the flush valves on the toilets, just
Yeah,
different
things like
things.
that. Different stuff.
And the street lighting, you said just, that's a fixed
what we're
amount?
paying DTE basically for the
Oh.
streetlights in the city.
Yeah.
420,000?
Yeah, it's not cheap,
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
so. Alright, it doesn't appear that we have too much on that one, you wanna, which one you wanna move to? Water and
Let's go
sewer?
to page, page 9 of 24.
Major streets?
Yeah.
Alright, you guys there? It
Yes.
should be major streets. So, you'll see that we still have salaries and overtime, social security out of here as well. You'll see that all of these funds basically contribute towards salaries. And let me explain that a little bit. So with DPW, for example, we have, we'll say, X amount of employees that work in that department. We attribute, say, one of the DP workers, part of his salary comes out of major streets, part of it local streets, partly water and sewer, to basically,
So there are basically 4 areas in which their salaries, and they're the only department where the salaries get allocated to different, so the first one is the building, but that is basically one of the smallest areas in terms of allocation. The biggest allocation goes to water and sewer, then to road, major roads, and then to local streets, and then finally building. So each employee gets allocated differently based on
how much
their-
work they do in an area.
How much work they do in these different areas. So their overall salary budget gets allocated along with the various, other salary-related costs.
So basically a percentage of each major fund is taken away. So, as you can
And
see.
that was done from survey from the previous year.
Yeah.
They tracked dollars, actually.
Yeah, so it's all broken down, basically, so, the largest thing in this fund you'll see is a requested budget of, 2,090,000. And Amir, if you wanna break down what's actually coming, or either you or John wanna break down exactly?
So there are different things that are going in there in terms of, what we are doing with the street repairs. So our philosophy, as, was pointed out by Tiffany in the last meeting, is that we are looking at first replacing the lead lines and some of the sewer problems. And then once those streets are done, that is when we pave them. So a lot of money is being allocated this year in this budget to street pavements, where we have already done the lead service lines, plus some of the streets where we're going to do the lead service lines. In addition to that, what we're doing is that we have budgeted a street sweeper truck in there. In fact, a couple of trucks. One is a street sweeper, and then John can probably explain more on that.
And some work trucks
Work
for the
trucks,
guys.
yeah.
So, additionally, just to put it in perspective, we're probably gonna be paving around 6 to 8 streets this year alone, trying to catch up with where we are with lead service lines. So, depending upon how many lead service line streets we get done this summer will dictate of how many we repave next year. So, we're trying to crank it up this summer. We're mandated to do almost 400 lead service lines. We are planning to try and kick out 500 more if we can. Hence, we'll have a lot more paving next year as well, so.
So our objective is to try and speed up the lead service line, even though we are ahead of what our target needs to be. But we're also dependent on the availability of the contractors, as well as, manpower that can actually do the job. So even though we're targeting 500, but that's a very, optimistic target and very high target. So we'll try to achieve that, but it depends on, you know, whether the contractors are available, because a lot of other communities are working on lead service line, and we are actually ahead of the curve. The others are trying to catch up, so there's a lot more, you know, demand for these lead service line replacements in the other communities. And as a result, you know, workmen are difficult to get, and their prices are also very high.
Yeah, it's only gonna get worse too, because as it's becoming more of a problem in the public eye, more communities are gonna start doing it. And the more affluent cities that can afford to pay for it a little bit better than us are gonna start sucking up all the contractors and driving up prices essentially. So we're hoping if we can
Give
make
them
a
enough
push
to stay
now
here.
to get as many as we can done, maybe we get even further ahead of the curve. Not that we're doing bad, because we are actually, from what we're told, pretty much far and away ahead of a lot of other communities already. But at some point, the other communities are gonna catch up, and they're gonna be needing the exact same thing. So,
I think as a, you know, as a target, we want to make lead service line replacements as one of our top priorities in the city, because it directly affects the health of the residents. And so we are trying to do and invest as much as we can in trying to, you know, complete this whole process. It's going to take 10, 12 years, based on, you know, what speed we go at. But it's better to do as much as possible, as early as possible.
so in the major streets, is there anything in there specific you guys want to discuss? It's pretty cut and dry with salaries, overtime, insurance and such, but we did go over the largest number in there, the capital outlays, and attributed what's in there. Everything else is very similar to what last year, with the exception of, you know, some additions to vehicles and such. Anything that piques your interest in there that you wanna mention?
The routine maintenance, what do you focus on routine maintenance? Because we have building maintenance on previous page.
No, this is,
Routine maintenance is, this is for major streets, so,
you know,
potholes.
potholes and stuff like that. I mean, this has nothing to do with the building. This
It's a
maintenance is
different-
just for the
Directly to
streets.
the roads.
And the major roads, not even the local roads, local streets.
So you'll see that in the next one we move to, which will be local streets as well. And just to put that in perspective, so the major streets, excluding Joseph Campo and Conant, which are the county roads, would be Holbrook, Caniff, I think Gallagher, Lumpkin, Bromback, and a number of ones that you wouldn't think would be major, but they are. They're actually side streets in our opinion.
Yes,
Uh,
I
we
was
have
just
a
going
whole
to say that Lumpkin is included.
Yeah,
Because
there's a lot
Lumpkin-
more than- there's a lot
That
more than
street
you
is in, school
Well-
district, school area, and very much bad
Lumpkin is
shape.
on our list, hopefully
For,
this summer,
I
along with
think I have-
Fleming, Klinger, Yeamans, Eveline, was it Council, or is it Dan? Dan Street, oh, Tiffany, hi. A whole list of them, basically.
But speaking on the street, I know this is a different conversation, but a lot of street, our sign need to be fixed. They're all like, you know,
We're fixing them as we
scrambling.
see them. I mean, if you see one that needs to be straightened, let us know.
Like,
Even
I mean,
next
like,
one
like
on
I
you.
do send it to you, right?
And we're
Yeah,
fixing
and-
them.
I
Yeah,
gave him a list today of them, as
Oh.
I drive through, I write them down, and
yeah. Thank you for
Okay,
fixing that
thank you.
Conan and Bangladesh Avenue sign on Comore.
We're working through them. As they
That's-
get reported or we catch them, we fix them.
Yeah.
So, but that very well could be in that routine maintenance as well, so.
And when you say vehicle maintenance, this include the police car or
No,
just
no,
the
this is just for the
street?
streets. This is just for the
So-
DPW vehicles that they use.
There's
So
a-
just like we allocate for the salaries out of here too, we do
Mhm.
that with the vehicles, so.
Police
You know, we-
vehicles are not part of this.
No, that's separate,
But we
okay.
have like, you know, our DPS trucks essentially, you know, we might buy one out of here, or we might buy one out of water and sewer.
when we repair them, we do the same. We may repair them under local one time, and then the next time the bill comes along, we
Depends
may put
on,
it
you
to
know, the
major.
usage.
So it's going back and forth, because we're using the vehicle in different allocations throughout the week.
So I'm sorry, I know that we are focusing on what's underground, like you said, it's a priority, but at this time of the year, we get hit with so many questions by the residents about the potholes. So I think it is a priority at this time. It affects residents directly.
We do
Uh,
that annually, Mayor, as soon as we know that
2
the
days today. we're
snow
running all day,
stops
too.
flying and the cold is leveling off, I
Yeah.
mean, we've actually already been out patching, but, I mean, you'll see the guys ramping up. I mean, we know the whole city has to be done. Every spring it has to be done, so,
So, yeah, that is separate from what I mentioned was basically the resurfacing of the entire road. So that, we would not wanna do a resurface and then, you know,
Have to dig
a
it
few
out.
months down, dig it all up just to replace water lines. You know, so that'd just be a waste of money that goes on resurfacing. So what I meant was that our priority is to do the underground and then do the resurfacing after we have done that. But in terms of repair, you know, minor repairs of the roads, that's separate and that is going to continue throughout.
yeah, that's routine and continual.
We
So,
did 6 streets today in potholes.
yeah, so it's,
Nice.
you're gonna continue to see them, and people will continue to report them. Over the weekend, North Kniff Alley was being reported, particularly because Kniff being shut down, it's now in people's minds. So we were actually, John and I were going back and forth over the weekend, you know, getting a plan together for that. We had a complaint about Mitchell and Comer, so that should be on the list. But systematically, every street will get gone down again in pothole patch, so, very aware on that, so. Anything else, in major streets that you guys are interested in?
That's,
So next page?
All right, moving on along, is local streets. Basically, everything that's not major.
So here also, we have about 600,000 in capital outlay, budget for next year. And that's a major, you know, cost, that we see in there.
So that's a street or two is being paved out of that, essentially what it is. So, there's always gonna be more money in major streets, just based upon how it's allocated to us. A lot of times you'll see like routinely, we'll actually switch money between the two. You're allowed by law to do so much. I don't have the exact parameters in my mind, I'd have to look it up, but for instance, Amir's predecessor swapped over 500,000 from major to minor.
880,000 from major to minor. Actually, you know, we get major share of our Act 51 revenues, which relate to basically the revenue that we get for roads and local streets. So major portion of that revenue comes in major streets, and a smaller portion comes in local streets. So as and when, you know, we feel that there is a need to switch or utilize funds from one to the other, we would do that.
So pretty much everything in this category is exactly the same as we just went through the last one. Some of the salaries are attributed to the employees, along with overtime, insurance, vehicle maintenance, routine. All the same things you'll see are identical. The only big variation is the capital outlay, which is a little bit less in here because most of the paving we're doing this summer are on the major streets.
So,
Any specific questions in there?
I don't.
All right, moving right
page
along.
23.
All right, water and sewer, so it's gonna be 592-557.
Yeah. So this is the biggest fund of the city outside of the general fund. And this is where, you know, our revenues come in from water, you know, charges, from sewer charges. And we do get, you know, grants here and there. So here we are spending again a huge chunk of money. So what you will notice is that this fund will have a negative balance between the revenues and expenses of 3 million. So basically our revenues are 10 million for this fund, and we are spending 13 million in expenditures this year. We do have a fund balance, beginning fund balance of 13 million. So we're utilizing some of that fund balance to speed up some of our capital projects in the city. So here, again, some of the big numbers in terms of capital expenditure, you'd see sewer and drainage, 4.1 million. There's another one in capital outlays of 4.3 million. Lead service line replacement, 1.2 million. These are some of the big ticket items, so almost 10 million in just these 3 items.
So additionally with this, we're also looking for other funding, and we have it. These are where some of the grants are hitting that we're getting. As far as Tiffany, what was the one we just got for the sewer study?
So that's from the FEMA grant that we got. We also have another one in for the phase 1B that we're hoping to get. It sounds like we're very high probability of getting that one, so we're just waiting on the final decision there, which is for that big relief sewer, which we do have a 5 million set aside in the sewer and water fund for that. So if we can get that, that may free up, 5 million in our water and sewer fund too.
So even though we have a lot of numbers on here, they could very well change rapidly depending upon what comes in as far as grants. And we also have an outstanding loan as well.
Yeah, so the way to fund this water and sewer expenditure is obviously through the water rates. And the other thing that we do is we fund it through the grants that we get, and some of the other sewer charges and some of the other charges. The problem is that the investment required in water and sewer infrastructure is huge. We're talking, Tiffany, how much in the long run? Close to,
Just for lead service line replacement, we're looking at like about 55 million.
yeah, just
So, and that's just there, that's not even including the water main itself. Water main, for a mile of water main, we're looking at about 1.9 million.
2 million.
2 million a mile.
2 million a mile, yeah.
So,
That-
and we have to replace all of it.
Expensive.
Just to get the shower and the toilet flush, that much money is gonna cost. We don't drink
Something
any
else
water
to
from
say.
tank.
We have
You know?
very old infrastructure, and
Drinking is
some of the
water,
decisions
we're
in the
buying
past
it.
were
Everyone's buying it in
aligned with the
Hamtramck.
future,
Well,
so.
I think once, there are 2 things that we have to do in this city. One is that we have a commitment to the city of Detroit to connect our sewers to theirs, okay? That's a commitment that is based on which they can take us to court if we don't comply. We should have done that 50 years ago. We haven't done it. So we owe them money for 50 years. That is a huge liability, that's contingent liability sitting on our books. Well, it's not on our books, but it could hit us. So I think the issue is much bigger than what we need to understand. We have to, and what that connection will do, it will elevate the problem of flooding in the city. So you do need to get rid of that problem. If we want the prices and the properties in the city to appreciate and the, people to come and live in the city, we have to get rid of that problem. So just that connection, Tiffany, how much did we
No.
That's the
Yeah, it's about 50 million
one.
for that.
Yeah,
for
just
the
for that.
phase 2.
So there are huge numbers that we are facing. So the fund balance of 10 million is nothing compared to what we require. We constantly be looking at, grants to fund some of these investments. And in addition to that, yeah, loans and then whatever cash that we do have. And, the water rates that, we charged our citizens.
The city's done a pretty good job, like in the last few years at least, of securing grants and loans and such to, not put the burden as much as they can on the residents. But, at some point, it's gonna have to be, it's decisions that were made many, many years before all of us that set us on this path that should have been handled
A long time ago.
60 years ago, actually,
Yeah.
so. But we're doing what we can. So, we've got a lot on the horizon. We went over a lot of stuff just in these last 3 sections, so. Anything jump out specifically in water and sewer funds that you guys would like to go over. We sort of did a quick overview on it, just like all the other funds, you see allocations for pretty much the employees, the insurance and everything, the equipment, and then of the capital outlays, and on this one, you have lead service lines factored in as well.
I just have one thing perspective to the residents paying the waters. If we do get more grants and that allow us to overcome our projection, will they receive a rebate? Because we're
Someday the water
charging,
prices will go down.
prices will go down.
Right, because here's how we determine our water rates. It's a very, very complicated model. And it is done by a consultant. And according to the consultant, our water losses are excellent. We have only 5% of water loss, which he said was amazing. So we are way ahead in terms of saving money for the residents. Now, according to the way that model is designed, we put in all our expenses, plus all the GLEVA rates that we get charged for, because we buy water from Great Lake Water Authority. So we have to pay them whatever rate and increases that they charge every year, and we have to pass that on. And in addition to that, whatever capital expenditure that goes into our system, we have to, so that's calculated and put in the model. And based on that model, we generate a water rate increase for the residents. So it's a very complicated model, and we try to even it out so that we don't have spikes, going up 50–60% and then coming down like that. So so that it's a steady increase over the years. So yeah, and as our grants come in, they get figured into that model. In addition to that, all the loans that we take, and some of the loans are forgiven. So all of that information is factored into the model, which directly affects the rate that the model calculates. So what you're saying is, indirectly, residents get a rebate every time we get a grant in terms of their water rates. So it's not like a direct rebate, a separate line item in there, in their bill, but the water rate reflects that grant that comes in. So every time there's a grant that comes in, every time there's a loan that is forgiven, it gets impacted into the model, and the rate get impacted accordingly.
And we're going after them like crazy. Just last week, we submitted several to one of our representatives' office. So the mayor and I was literally just on a Zoom with him the other day, advising that it's coming through and trying to help us out. So every opportunity we can to knock this down, we're taking. So it's going to increase for a while. We have no choice. We have to fix the infrastructure. But the hope is, at some point, we get it fixed and things start leveling off and going down.
Yeah, I think, once these big issues in the infrastructure are taken care of, the overall cost of maintaining and running the city would come down, because we would have a lot less capital expenditure needed to, address issues, unless something other major comes up.
Just out of curiosity, what is the cross connection? I know it's not a whole lot of money, talking about 17,000.
Cross connection.
Bottom of the page. Is
Right here,
23.
Page 23.
Cross connection,
557802.
Yeah, it's only 25,000.
that's where we have an agency that goes out and checks for the businesses that their water is not tapped into the sewer. So they go out, they test it, go to all the businesses every year, check that, and we have expenses related to that testing for the cross connection.
Yes, sir.
Alright. Anything else jumping out at you, gentlemen? Alright, what else we have, John, here? Is that it?
We have
Big ones.
Matt, fire.
You want to do fire?
Yep.
anything else from John you guys wanna ask?
I'm good.
Well, I do have one. John, I think I emailed you regarding that sweeping this,
Yes,
Yeah, so we.
Oh, you might have missed that.
I think you missed
Yeah.
that. We.
I missed it, okay.
Yeah, in the street,
Sweeping
capital
is just-
expenditure of 2 million, we have catered
Street
for street
Mhm.
sweeper.
Yeah,
You know, so 2 of them, and that's reflected
Yeah.
in there.
and what's nice about that, I've done a little more research on that, and there is models out that actually have a vac on them, so we can actually vac out our catch basins,
Yeah,
which we're
Which
spending,
will be huge.
we're spending
because-
tons of money on cleaning
Yes,
catch
cleaning
basins.
the-
Yeah.
We're trying to
We need
do a lot of things that traditionally we've been farming out to contractors that have been charging exorbitant rates and doing them in-house again, including street sweeping. So
That's good.
we're trying to, you know, with,
Street sweeping was 60,000 is what
so
we paid
important.
before, now it's for only one cleaning a year for the residences.
Mhm.
And then half of the street once a week going down Joseph Campo, Conant, Kniff and Holbrook. And $60,000 a year just to give the residents one sweeping, compared to having our own machine.
yeah, our plan is to get our
Yeah.
own machine, get our own people cross-trained and start doing
Yeah.
it, so that's the plan.
Right.
great.
Yes, yeah, that's,
Amazing.
I sent you a link or sent you a PDF, the company that offering those machines.
Yep, we got it.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, John, thank you.
Sure.
Chief, fire chief?
Oh, we got this.
In the hot seat.
It's warm now.
It's wrong.
I'm serious. It's hot seat. All right, what page are we at for the
Page number.
7?
Yep.
7?
7.
All right. Again, salaries and such are up. We have to, you know, we know that we're gonna be going into contract negotiations with the firemen here soon. So we are trying to anticipate that to some degree. Obviously, we can't anticipate everything, but we will try. A lot of the other stuff here is all contractual as far as the insurance, holiday pay, social security obviously goes in line with the salary.
I'm sorry, what page are you on?
7.
7. So, most of it is in line with what you've seen last year, with the exception of some of the capital outlays here.
Yeah,
And-
so I'll just explain the capital outlay. We have budgeted a couple of items in here. One is the roof replacement for the
Fire department.
fire department building. And the other is half a portion of the cost of a fire engine. So we'll budget half a portion for '24 and the other one for next year. There's about a 2-year waiting period for these engines. And what we are doing is, we are going to try and get them through grants. So we're already applied for those grants.
Yeah, Chief literally just sent it in 3 weeks ago.
And so I've reflected a similar amount of money in the revenues as fire grant, so that this will offset that. So it's not a big hit on the overall, you know, general fund.
So there's been a little neglect in that area, and we're trying to make amends.
Yeah, we have to replace 2 of the engines, so we're working on that to try and get grants to do that. And like I said, there's at least a 2-year waiting period from the time you place the order. So we'll place the order once we have a grant approval, and that's how we plan to move forward on this.
So another large item out of there is also the ambulance. Currently contractual, but as we know, the chief is currently working on a plan to eventually take that back in-house as well. It's a multi-year plan, a lot of training involved and a lot of equipment needed, so it's not something we can do all in one budget year, but eventually our hope is to get back to that as well, and get them the gear they need. Chief, was there anything you wanted to add in regards to your budget that you wanted to tell the council in there?
No, we're just, in line, we're trying to keep our expenses low, but we do need a lot of equipment replaced. Amir said our engines, we're working on, we have built in here a cycle to start replacing our turnout gear. So instead of
Yeah,
having
that's,
a large,
yeah, that's another, thing that you're trying to do.
yeah, instead of having a large, $150,000 expense every so often, we're gonna break it down over several years. And
So
this is
every
gonna
year,
allow us to.
we budget for a few, gear replacements every year, so that is not a big chunk,
All in one
one in
hit.
5 year, so, something like that. So
So-
we'll keep replacing them, and then we'll get into a cycle where every year we replace 1 or 2 or 3,
And just like all the other department heads, we're trying to offset as much as we possibly can with grants, so. Any questions specifically in there for the chief, or anything that jumps out at you wanna mention?
So the ambulance, I remember the meeting 2 years ago, used to be on Zoom, when they approved this, they were talking about a contract of 125,000 a year. So what is that, why is it 300,000?
So,
For
I,
the peak rate.
okay, so, I mean, I can't specifically comment on to what it was originally. I just don't know without looking it up. But this is in line with what our current costs are, and additionally, we do have 2 gigs, as the chief just mentioned, in addition for at least 8 hours a day, so, I'm not sure what the original cost of this was, but, I mean, just like any other contractor we do, it's always a great price at first.
Last year, we did spend $302,000 on this. And for this year, we have budgeted 324. And I'm budgeting the same amount for next year.
And do we have is this one of the ones we're going out to bid on too?
Yes,
Okay.
the initial cost for the first
That's
rig is
what I don't understand. We
134,000,
contracted
and then it's $70 an hour. for
I
the
see
rig
the
with the peak
overtime
rate.
will maybe
Okay.
bring us to
All right,
180
yeah,
or something.
so, I mean, we're anticipating potentially having to rebid this one out as well. But, I mean, having 2 rigs, at least for 8 hours a day, is quite expensive, so also another reason why we wanna take it back in-house,
Because
so.
wasn't it amended to add those?
Yeah,
Yeah.
within the past year.
Yeah,
see
recently,
the
so
overtime.
you probably saw the first
Yeah.
part of the
Overtime.
contract, and then we amended it to
62,000.
add
Yeah,
like the
they-
high times.
They're
What
close
is
to
that?
5 million a year
Do you remember?
out
December.
of 21.
December 30th.
18
Yeah, so our
million
contract is
revenue.
up with them in December, so
Mhm.
probably within the next few months, you'll see a request for proposal coming out to the various ambulance services. We'll get all the bids in again, and
But we preferred, after Councilman Mayor Pro Tem is not here, he was the one initiated that we preferred to have outside ambulance services in-house, on this site.
and we're heading that way.
Because
It just takes time.
I guess I meant to say like not in-house of the fire service, like from the city administration perspective, that we want to have our private ambulance services. And that's why we allocated 125,000 plus over time.
So-
It gives us a more, people ability to get ambulance right away, That's,
So, at
But
least
what
our
we-
thought process, Councilman, were that we potentially could offer better services going back in-house. But if that's the will of the council at that point, then we'll head back that direction. For at least this budget year, we're still maintaining outside ambulance services. The chief is putting together a plan and trying to get things in line, trying to get equipment, trying to get training. It's not really costing us anything right at this point, it's more of a planning thing and seeing where we could go. So we haven't really expended anything there, so, it's,
So to answer your question, the next budget year, we're going as what you are saying we should be
Mhm.
doing. So we do have an outside service that we use.
Councilman's saying the opposite, he's
No,
saying
no, no,
stay
no.
with the outside.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying.
Oh.
That's
Mhm.
what we're doing. So for next year, we are staying with that service.
yeah.
And that's the money that we put in there.
So even though we accepted their contract with the 125 a year or more or less, or more why are we predicting that we're gonna be spending $300,000?
Well, so, Matt, what was the original price?
Yeah, it is.
The original price of the contract was $144,000. When the past city manager, before she left, there was some issues with response times. So So she worked out a deal with the company to provide a second rig for 8 hours during their peak hours. They do a very comprehensive analytics,
Yes.
find when their peak hours are, and they have a second rig stationed in the city during that time, 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. The cost of that rig is $70 per hour. So it's $560 a day that we pay for that rig. That's where, you compound that over the year, that's where you get the $314,000.
And of course, with having to bid it out again, we put a little wiggle room in there in case it goes up.
Well, the thing is, if you look at last year's number, we did spend $302,000 for this service. So it's not a big difference, in terms of, you know,
Sure.
next year's.
So,
I think we all understand that, just that the number is throwing us off, that one number is saying on the paper, and then we get one into the different number
well, the
and
peak
more
service
bu-
almost
more,
doubled that.
Well,
more
I just
bu-
pulled up the resolution for December.
more budget adjustment.
What
To
is it?
answer your question.
What?
You want me to answer you?
Yeah, sure.
Well, the resolution back in December, it does state the 144, but it also includes the peak time hours of $70 an hour. So you guys all, well, you were absent, so maybe that explains your questions
Yeah,
right now. So there is other expenses above the contract. The contract is just a base pay, but everything else that's additional will add up to the additional amount. Like $70 an hour, how many people are in each rig for the peak time? There's not just
Two.
one, there's two, you know? So they're sitting down $140 an hour, 8 hours a day times $365.
It's just,
It-
it's just
it-
$70 for the rig.
It
Oh.
comes to 174,000 just for the,
Sitting there.
It's,
well, it
Well, it's
does,
used if it's
the-
needed.
if it's
the-
needed, it's available.
Yeah,
It's
that's-
not just sitting there.
I also believe that, well, you know, in mid-contract, we asked for this as well. So, you know, we asked them to supply another rig in an industry that's already hurting for employees during the most busiest time of the day. So, I mean, it kind of makes
So,
sense
so,
why it,
so if you add these two together, this comes to
$300.
$320,000.
but as stated, we are about to rebid this out. So, I mean, it's possible the bids could come in cheaper for the whole package, but it's also possible they could come in higher.
But what we could do is, we could, I don't know how we're bidding it, but we could bid for 2 rigs instead of 1. And see how much do they charge for that, versus, you know, having one and then having coverage for peak hours.
Yes. I mean, we'll do the best we can with it, I mean, but it's budgeted accordingly. So. All right, any other questions for the fire chief? All right,
And
Chief Ann,
page 6 and 7.
probably could have stayed in your seat.
You say page,
6 and 7.
Yeah, 6 and 7.
All right, so, same story, different fund salaries for all the people, adjusted accordingly for all the contracts and anticipated contracts, holiday pay overtime, traffic overtime, all budgeted accordingly. Insurances, retirement, sick and severance, office supplies is the first thing there's really a little wiggle room in. Nothing necessarily really crazy on here, no,
overtime is,
was that?
overtime is,
Overtime we have reduced
Yeah,
actually
oh,
from, you know,
outrageous overtime,
yeah,
315,000.
so our budget this year was 380, and we have reduced it to 250 for next year.
I remember years of it being way higher than that.
Yeah, and
Was
then
it? I
last
was not
year,
there, so I don't know.
so last year we spent 315,000 in overtime.
So a lot of that has to do
Yeah.
with having trouble getting people, so, I mean, you know, when we're short officers overall in the department, I mean, someone has to work, so, you know, officers get held over, not to mention emergencies, if we have a major scene, you know, I mean, it's hard to predict, I mean, you never know what's gonna happen or not happen. People get sick, you know, so that you know, causes overtime, but, you know, we are trying to staff accordingly. You know, we beat this drum over almost every council meeting about, you know, we need more people. If we're staffed accordingly, the overtime in theory should go down, so, we're also trying to add a couple to offset that, a couple actual employees to try and offset that a bit. So that should help.
Plus, I think, by increasing, some of our inducting new people in, we're hoping to increase our revenue in terms of fines and forfeiture.
Yeah, well, just that, I mean, we don't police for dollars, but an actual byproduct of the officers out there being on patrol, writing tickets and such, it does generate revenue for the city as well. So, by virtue of having more officers out there issuing citations and stuff, you will see a little bit of a revenue spike in that area as well. So that will offset things in addition. Anything else, Councilman, that you wanted to look at?
I just want to ask the chief, I think it's a little bit confidential, but the lawsuit settlement, it's on the top. Is it something we're working on to have it less?
Where are we looking at, Councilman?
At the top portion of the
No,
police,
bottom.
or the bottom?
We at the bottom.
Oh, no, you're
Page six.
looking at the top, that's not police section, he's looking at the top of page six.
Yeah, then,
That's not police.
never mind, yeah, I thought so, there was,
That would be, that's building and grounds.
No,
That's the bottom of legal.
Yeah, there's zero money in for next year.
okay. Yeah, I see it,
That's
this
last year's
was settled already,
settlement.
yeah.
So,
Do you have a second thought about the, it talked about once, installing the cameras and,
We're working on that.
Yeah, the security camera.
It's a good camera.
I'm hoping to bring someone here from the company that can give you a presentation that will just give you an idea. It helps give the public an idea of what it's not, because there's a lot of misinformation out there on what people
Sure.
think these cameras can do. It's a lot controversial.
Controversial.
it can reduce a lot of overtime
But
too.
this will, hopefully will give you a
Oh,
good
reduce the
presentation
crimes,
of what the cameras can do and what they don't do.
yeah, sure,
I think we did budget for that too, didn't we?
yeah, we talked about it.
No,
during the
he
council.
said budget, it's not there.
Put it
It's
anywhere
not there, the budget, you mean.
here yet.
No, no, it's not there.
All right, well, we'll see what you guys wanna do after the presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, we can talk about that. So hopefully they'll come.
All right, do we wanna do, not the forfeitures, the 911? Prepared for that one? No, nothing, all right, okay.
That changed much.
Yeah, there's nothing in there.
All right, well, that's the gist of it for police chief. Did you have any other questions for her?
No, I don't, Mr. Mayor.
No.
Yeah, that's, one number I see it is, so we had many, I don't know, the last year numbers, the prisoner lodging.
Oh,
Oh,
different.
yeah.
and you wanna talk about that?
So that one, it kind of fluctuates, that's a little hard to predict, it's based on what happens in court. What we're seeing now, the trend around the country is that there's more of people being put on tethers and things like that, requiring them to come to court, showing their movements and things like that, house arrests and stuff, as opposed to putting them into the county jail. And it has a lot to do with court reform and police reform and just social justice issues. So we're seeing a lot more of that, so we actually reduced the prisoner lodging based on the patterns that we had seen in the past year or so.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's all dependent on what the court,
When the
we have
court
no
does.
control over what the judge does, but these are gonna be people that haven't gone to trial yet, they're just waiting for the next court date, so.
So
Yeah.
the number in there,
Like you were asking more in the next year.
yeah, so the number in there is just an estimate, it could be less. Like, for example, this year's budget was 75, but
Yeah.
so far we've only spent 25,000.
So we took that down to.
So, yeah, we reduced it from the budget, but we just never know how much we'd require. So it's not a big number and, it's just an estimate in there. Like last year, we spent 54,000, so, it's just an estimate in there.
All right,
Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
all right.
All right, thank you.
Conrad, you wanna zip through assessing? It's a quick one. You guys don't mind?
Conduit.
All right, what page have you got for Conrad for assessing?
He's got the bigger number, I think, he's on the property level, collect.
Oh, yeah, that's not.
Everybody hates me for the taxes.
Taxes, yeah.
So there is some correlation to the revenue there.
Page four. Page four.
All right, yeah, there's not a whole lot of lines here to look at, so we figured we could bring them up here, and
Mhm.
if anyone had some specific questions, we could get this one out.
Get the number, it's gonna go out.
So, everything's pretty much in line with where it's been. Salary's a little bit up because, we moved someone in there that hadn't been for a while, the assistant assessor position, which was sorely needed. We anticipate as time progresses to move some contractors out of there completely, because it was dominated by contractors for a while. But, you know, in line with our trend of taking stuff back in-house and making it cheaper and more efficient in our opinion. Not much there. Gentlemen have any questions on it? Good to go? Ready to take a 5-minute break and then start the full meeting?
Can I ask a question? Maybe it's related to you or to the full budget. So it's shown here that the property tax, 4 million point something, but last year was 7.3 million, the year before was 6.9. But this is up until March. Are we expecting more? Because it's impossible that it will decrease by 3 million.
You probably won't get the final numbers. There's a settlement process that has happened with the county and the city itself. So there are taxes that are collected, and then the taxes that aren't collected, that's where the settlement process comes in with Wayne County Treasurer. So people who haven't paid their taxes were made whole by the county. So the settlement process that the treasurer and anything in will be going through with the county itself, so that's when we'll be made whole.
Okay. And so whatever we have now, until March, I seen a report that you sent that says the revenue exceeded the expenditure by 2 million until March. Does it mean that
That's
from
with income tax.
everything was like, no, the total?
Yeah,
revenue?
the total.
So does it mean from now until the end of the fiscal year, which is June, everything will be like an extra, more than what we need?
No. Okay, so what we do have is that we are projecting a revenue of 21 million. What we had in our budget was 18 million. So we are projecting an increase of about 3 million from what we budgeted.
So last year, when it was budgeted, there was a 3 million deficit that was anticipated being made up by a fund balance that we had. Basically, we were tapping into our reserves. Thankfully, because things came to fruition that we were waiting for, revenues increased, and we were able to not tap into that fund balance for this past year, so, which is really good. I mean,
So just to complete this whole, so if we have a revenue of 21 million, we also have a expenditure of 21 million for this year. So what we will have is that we will balance our budget for this year, and we have a fund balance of 6.5 million, and that fund balance will continue for next year as well. So we're not eating up from our fund balance. There may be a likelihood that we may have a little bit more revenue than what we're showing or anticipating at this stage, because like Conrad said, it's difficult to exactly predict actual revenues until, some of the things that, come to fruition. So we could have a little more surplus than what we have, but right now we have a surplus of $6,000 in terms of revenue and expenditure. So overall, it's a balanced budget for this year. And-
So I'm saying, because the year hasn't ended.
No, it hasn't.
We still have 3 more months to go.
Right, but some of the anticipated revenues have been included in this 21 million.
But this is for the property tax. I'm saying everybody is complaining that his property tax went up, so it's impossible that it will go down than last year. It has to go up.
Right.
Last year it went up by 450,000.
Right.
This year I think it should be up more, way more than that.
Yeah.
Not a single person I found that complained that his property tax is the same.
Not necessarily. We're limited to how much property taxes can increase by. So basically the rate of inflation, there's a millage reduction fraction that goes in there. So
Yeah.
when it uncaps, just because a property uncaps, the taxable value goes up, does not mean we capture all that money. We have to do calculations that are state mandated as well from Headley and the addition and stuff like that, so we can never go over the rate of inflation in increases. So just because a taxable value uncaps for the person who purchased it the year previously, we have to do a millage reduction fraction calculation later that reduces the millage rates to make sure that we're in line of the inflation. So we can never go higher than inflation.
So we were at 20 mills assessed, and because of the property values going up, Headley pushed us down to 18.3. So there's 1.7 mills
That we
taken
lost.
off the tax already. So we're not actually seeing as much revenue as people would believe.
So basically, in terms of property taxes, this is the law in Michigan, and I'm sure in other states as well, that your property values and taxes will not be allowed to go up beyond inflation rates. So if the property values go up in, then beyond the inflation rate, then whatever your millage is, it gets reduced, so that it brings the overall taxes to within the increase in terms of inflation. So from last year to this year, the increase that we will see will be based on just the inflation, even if property prices have gone up. So as the property prices keep going up, and our villages are going to keep going down. So we'll only get basically the inflation factor in for next year.
I mean, but when you read the equation they use with proposal A, when the market value increase, it's automatically the tax they pay increase. I'm not talking about the value itself.
Right,
Like the tax goes up automatically, and that's what I see with people.
right.
So this difference of 3 million decrease that I see is something that's not expected.
Well, overall, because like I said, that's
3
probably what
million?
was,
Which number are you looking at?
It's saying here, property tax 4 million. When I read last year's report, it says 7.3 million, so what is that?
Which line?
No, no, no. This
Where are
is
we at?
7 million.
On the front
First,
page?
first
First
four.
page,
Mhm.
it's 4.284 last year.
The report that I read, the audit report,
Oh, the
That's
audit report,
7.3.
that's something else. That includes, some of the other, it's, the audit report, bunches a lot of revenues together to reflect property tax. So it's not just this one number.
It's more to it.
Yeah, there are other revenues that it kind of bunches together and adds together to reflect that.
okay, because when I
Yeah,
look
no,
at
no,
the
no.
income tax,
Right, so that is the revenues, or the groupings that you see in the audit report are different from what you see here. Here, you're just seeing straight GL numbers. So what they do is they add a bunch of GL numbers to make a group called property tax.
okay, because I was wondering, income
No,
tax,
no, no,
everything
no,
else
no, no,
matches,
No,
like,
no.
like
So,
the
yeah,
income
you-
tax here is just like it is in the
Right,
audit report, but
Right,
the
but
property
property
tax.
tax is different.
Okay, so I'm just hoping that, this is not gonna be the final number, because,
The property taxes increases, how
Probably.
can it decrease?
yeah,
without knowing the exact number on the audit might reflect all the property taxes collected, while our report just collect the city villages that are collected. So the additional villages for the county, the library and stuff like that, that
Yeah,
are included
yeah,
in
that
that as
would be-
collections are not included in our projections for the city. All we do is put what's collected by the city, that would go into our general expense.
okay, well, hopefully, are we gonna have another report by June to look at the final numbers, or?
We could actually print this out weekly for you if you want. I mean,
No, this, what you're looking at are two, from the audit report is something else. It's a different number. What I'll do is, I'll do a reconciliation, you know, and I'll then bring that reconciliation so that you can see this number and that number, what is the difference?
Okay.
And where is the difference coming from?
All right, thank you.
You gonna take a break?
It's up to you gentlemen, so Councilman Hassan
Five.
still isn't here.
Yes, he is.
Oh, he's here?
I just saw him in the hallway.
It's,
Take 5 minutes break.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem is here. Welcome, sir.
So 5 minutes, Mayor?
Yeah.
Okay.